Good afternoon, and welcome to the second day of Fintech Week. My name is Deepika Sharma, and I'm joining as the chair of the board of directors of CFA Society New York. I'm pleased to welcome all of you dialing in today to our second day of the inaugural Fintech Week. We have a lot of content packed in 3 days. So we're going to have 3 panels in 3 days. Today is day 2. For those of you who also joined yesterday, we kicked off with a focus on career paths, professional learning, and what leadership means in times of transformation. And I was just told that 450 people joined us on the call yesterday. And I'm seeing the numbers go up. So it seems like a lot of people are interested in hearing about fintech. Today, we're going to pivot from that focus on careers and learning to a focus on the business and the impact. So mainly we'll tackle questions such as what has been the impact of innovation and technology on investment practitioners? How has their day-to-day changed? How have those trends actually accelerated in light of COVID and the work from home situation that we are in? And importantly, we're gonna listen directly from the business leaders that are leading innovation in this space and that are changing the landscape of what financial services will look like in the next 5 to 10 years. So before we start, I just want to give a big thank you to the CFA New York Fintech Group, as well as the event organizers that have put in a lot of hard work to make this series possible. And that includes Carol Crawford, Mary Beth Martorana, Alex Piccolo, Francisco Vasquez, Amy Young, and Sean Zhang, as well as a huge thank you to the CFA New York staff who continues to make this series possible. So without much further ado, I'm just going to introduce you to the first panel for today, which is the data-driven firm. And as the name suggests, we're going to talk about how firms are using data and technology to stay one step ahead of their competitors. And the moderator who's leading this is Eric Lebovich. He is a senior product manager at Point72. He's a CFA charter holder and brings a decade of experience as a fintech product manager to today's session. He has developed industry-leading research functionality as a product manager before at AlphaSense, Bloomberg, and Factset. With that, Eric, over to you.
Thank you, Deepika. Pleasure to be here. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining this discussion on the data-driven firm. We have a fantastic panel today, and though it would make sense to hand it off to each of them so they can introduce themselves and speak a bit on their personal story in relation to data and fintech's advancement. So to start things off, I'm going to hand it off to Cristina to introduce herself.
Thank you, Eric, and good morning or good afternoon, everyone. I'm Cristina Pieretti. I am the general manager of the Digital Insights unit of Moody.com, which basically takes care of the commercialization of ratings and research. And I also, own Moody.com as a platform. As part of my group, I've been in Moody's for 13 years. Previous to that, I had a career in banking, and in Moody's, I basically had a bunch of roles, including product management roles. I was one of the founding members of our innovation unit. I also had our first acquisition of commercial real estate data and analytics until late last year, and now I'm managing the unit I mentioned at the beginning. And it's a pleasure to be here.
Rajesh?
Hello, everyone. This is Rajesh Damarapati. Good to be here. I'm actually founding partner of Digital Alpha Technologies based out of New York City and Princeton. We basically provide solution engineering and business enablement solutions to capital market clients. So a little bit of background before starting Digital Alpha Partners. I was at McKinsey's investment office. Before that, I was at Bloomberg Enterprise Solutions. Before that, at Goldman Investment Research.
And Phil?
Yeah, thanks, Eric. Hi, everyone. I'm Phil Snow, the CEO of Factset. Ironically, I discovered Factset through the CFA Society of San Francisco newsletter in 1995 as I was doing my job search. And I think the last event I attended with the New York Society was level 2 training with Bob Stoller. If any of you have been around a while, you probably remember Bob. I've been at Factset for the last 25 years, and I think today we have well over 150 active charter holders at our company. not just in the sales organization, but also in product development and technology. And I'm sure many of you have either been Factset users in the past or active users today of our data and analytics platform. And it's great to be here talking with all of you.
Thank you. So I've got some questions. And of course, for those who have others, please send them in and we'll hopefully get to them, or they'll be incorporated in some that we have. I'm going to kick things off with the context that we're all already in right now. As you can tell, we're all joining this virtually. So within this work from home environmental context, Cristina, what's changed in the traditional way of working, whether it's within your team or with your clients?
Yeah. So I would say, we think about this question as to how we've changed in Moody's, and then how have we changed our approach towards delivering products to our clients. I think if I think about the way we've changed, two things come to mind. One, it's technology, how we've embraced technology. I mentioned before, I was one of the founding members of the innovation unit that we founded in 2016. And I remember it was kind of an uphill battle to, bring Slack and Zoom to the company. And why do we need another collaboration method? And frankly, we couldn't have survived without that. I think one of the best examples we have about how we adopt a new way of working is, when I was managed our commercial real estate analytics division, we had a team of more than 200 people collecting data in an office in White Plains. And, in less than 3-4 days, we created virtual workstations in AWS, the cloud provider, and we're able to move everyone to work remotely. And to our surprise, we increased the productivity of the team. So I think that talks about, how technology can enable productivity, and also how we completely change our mind frame about what does it mean to have a flexible working environment and having people, not co-located as we had them before. And then in terms of our clients, I think it's a fundamental change because, and we were talking a little bit about it in the prep call, you have people working from home. I'm currently sitting and I don't have 2 monitors. I just have my laptop. So, the possibility of opening different browsers or looking at different things to consume the content, it's going to be very different. So I think integration and delivering the content to where clients want to consume it, it's more important than ever.
So Phil, on that, how has the reality of that screen in real estate changed the use of your product?
Yeah, just building up what Cristina just said about delivering things how our clients want to consume it. We were on that path, but what's happened in the last 12 months for all technology companies, I think, is and for the clients within the space is an increased sense of urgency around digital transformation and upgrading the technology stack so that consumers of technology and then clients can essentially consume the data in the ways that they need to. So, there's a lot of pressure in the industry to be more efficient, and we all need to look at increasingly large amounts of structured and unstructured data to do our jobs. So delivering the data and allowing people to look at it in new ways is very important. So, Factset, I think, traditionally has been thought of as a workstation product. Many of the clients that I dealt with were very adept at using Factset within the Excel environment or the Office environment. But that next generation of users is going to want to use the data in new and interesting ways. So you may want to go into some environments and begin to look at a whole host of data using Python, for example, or using Tableau or different visualization tools. So we're very focused as a company on making sure that we're agnostic in terms of how we deliver the data and analytics to our clients, whether it's through a screen, an API, or even through some other third party at this point.
So Rajesh, kind of jumping off of that, how is that impacted the changing demands on technology itself and the data use?
Absolutely. So one of the key change that we noticed is like the cultural and technology barriers that existed and prevented remote work. Like that, there has been a structural shift in that. Like people are more open to where the work takes place. So that's one trend. The second is like people have adapted to change their practices to capture the potential productivity gains working out of the the home. And then one of the things that we observed with the digital leaders, people who have like embraced technology and integrated these systems internally, they kind of weathered the storm fairly well compared to others who were not ready with all the integrations that needs to be in place. The another aspect that we noticed is like companies which never kind of didn't promote like remote working, or were not comfortable with onboarding talent remotely, they changed very fast and they onboarded teams that need to help them with modernization. So in terms of cloud adoption, there is like in this whole thing, the acceleration of cloud on the migration to the cloud has taken a big boost. Like for example, it's not just about moving high-intensive computing workloads to the cloud, but people are now even open to having the workstations for their employees in the cloud. There are also challenges to some of those things, right? Like, for example, data protection. How do you, like, especially if you are giving out laptops to people to work on at their homes, like how do you do the data protection? And there has also been a little bit of a spike in the cybersecurity incidents in this whole pandemic year. And another trend that we have noticed is like the intelligent automation, things that are manual and routine. People adapted technologies such as RPA to get the automation going, but with the human in the loop.
So let's kind of talk about data. Historically, where it's lived within firms and how it's interacted. And it certainly, I know it's changed a fair bit. I'm going to go back to Phil, once previously worked at Factset, so have a bit of context here. Perhaps you could speak to just how that's really evolved. I mean, not just in maybe not even the full 25 years, because that might be going back a little too far, but I know that's certainly changed a fair bit of late. And how has it changed as it relates to the client use of your data?
Yeah, so one of the biggest trends I see in the end clients is this need to consume more data and to organize it in more efficient ways. When I started at Factset, as a consultant, on our system, we might have had, let's say, 10 data sets, none of those which were ours. So you might have had CompuStat data, some IBES, a few indices, some pricing data, and so on. Today we collect 30 core content sets ourselves. We've got well over 1,000 third parties that supply data into the traditional Factset ecosystem. And then clients more and more are uploading their own data into our ecosystem, whether it's their portfolios or other data that they want to analyze in their research process. And the reason they do that is because integrating data within our industry is hard work. Factset's very good at it, the concordance of it, lining up the data so you can analyze it. That's the value that we add. But there's probably a limit to what we can do ourselves as well. So just given the acceleration of the amount of alternative data sets that clients want to look at, that need to look at, honestly, to compete with passive strategies, there's a need to tie all of this data together in a broader ecosystem. A good example of what we're doing now is working with firms like Snowflake, where we're putting up our data into their environments, and where clients are also loading a lot of their own data, into an environment where they can analyze data in different ways. So we're beginning to kind of see the edges of that ecosystem expand as clients need to look at more and more data to compete with all of the pressures that we're seeing in the marketplace.
So Rajesh, I know data used to be siloed. I still sometimes get things in CSV, and we've migrated to APIs and buzzwords like data lakes. Maybe it's worth kind of speaking a bit further as to kind of where we've come from, where we are, where things are headed. Perhaps even jumping from the notion of Snowflake.
Sure, absolutely. So, like looking at a little bit of a history from data point of view, right? So, like data was always looked at as a byproduct of your business operations and transactions. That's how we kind of started capturing the data, and then came in the data warehouses so that you can capture your critical data in a cleaner form. You can use it for reporting and business decision making. And then we found that data warehouses cannot support non-relational data, unstructured data, and also it becomes expensive to store huge volumes of data in data warehouse kind of a setup. So we came up with like data lakes, right? So which allows you to store unstructured data, external data, your in-house data. It can all be stored at a much lower cost point. But again, with all this, data was still seen as an accessory to decision making. It is not like a vital resource. It's not like how water is for us. One of the reasons why data remained us in the silos is because of the lack of trust. The data quality is critical in order to make good insights out of it and take decisions based on that. Which can lead to a reputational risk if it is also being used for the reporting and the quality is not good. And that's one of the reasons why it remained as a silo. And also the lack of some organizations, it's also lack of master data management or a reference data. There is no common language that is used across the organizations for the entities, the core entities in an organization. And also the access controls, the technology was not at a place where they can give row level and column level access to the data. And also these things kind of evolved based on the business needs that came in, that translated into quick projects, and people basically built on top of what they already had, to basically address the urgent business needs. There was no long-term perspective in integrating all these data sets. So from there, how are basically companies moving towards an integrated data platform? So first, in order for that to make happen, companies realize that they need to change the culture, how people deal with the data. So people need to instill a data-driven culture, and it starts from the top. So the leadership, there has to be leadership commitment. So leadership basically has to say data is paramount to every business function, every decision, and every process. And then they basically empower the right people to make that happen. In addition to data culture, another thing that needs key focus is strong data foundation or capabilities. So one of the big challenges right now for some organizations is how do they scale both the data culture and data capabilities, right? So, and that's where the cloud kind of comes in. So not to jump into the cloud topic yet, but let's say if we look at what do we mean by data capabilities and data foundation. So ultimately what organizations want is they want to convert the data into information, and from information they want to generate insights. From insights they want to take actions and decisions that can lead to desirable business outcomes. But how can all that happen without a strong data foundation? So the elements of the data foundation, if you think of it as a data supply chain management, for example, how fast are you able to convert the data that is being either generated internally or coming from your external sources, or things that you have to onboard because new things that you learned about your business, how fast are you able to convert that data into insights, right? So that's basically your data supply chain management. And there are a whole bunch of things that goes into that, such as data governance, the data quality, the technology platform that you use, data architecture that you use, all that basically becomes the ingredients of making your data supply chain management or insights supply chain management successful.
So, Cristina, I know Moody's has grown a fair bit, acquired entities. Certainly, it's evolved, and maybe you could speak to how data has changed within the organization, or even perhaps across between ratings and the analytics side, or within the various entities within any of that organization.
Yeah, I think, you mentioned we had grown quite a bit. I think we're close to, 20 acquisitions since the creation of Moody's Analytics, or even a little bit more. And what we had as a result of that is we had a lot of silos. So we had, a lot of good data, living in different parts of the organization. And throughout the last year, we embarked on a whole reorg where, at the center of it, it's making sure that we are organized around on customer needs. And we don't have data in different parts of the organization, but we actually have, all the data available, and we're still in the process of working on it, but all the data that could be relevant for someone, looking at a company or looking at a real estate or property or looking at a security or looking at a market in the same place. So that's one part of the initiative. It's making sure that our silos are kind of seamless. If they exist, are a non-event for our customers, which before they were. So that's one thing. The other thing that we've seen, it's a lot of customer demand for that type of capability, and that's especially true when you look at tier 1 and tier 2 banks and asset managers, that they're interested in not consuming your data through a terminal or the browser, but they have their own data lakes or data capabilities, and they want to consume the data through the API. So there's definitely a lot of work on our side to make sure that those data sets are connected and available in whatever way they want to consume it. But we also see a lot of, again, activity on the customer side, especially when you look at those, big players in the market.
So I guess on that wavelength, so as we've all said, data has certainly been a central part of everything we've been doing in FinTech. So how, let's speak more, I guess, how the demands and the types have changed. And on that, Rajesh, who are these different types of consumers? We get to hear buzzwords like data scientists, different forms of delivery. When I was a kid, I thought Python was an animal. Apparently, it's not. So maybe you could speak to how that's completely changed, more or less in the last decade.
Yeah, absolutely. So, my exposure to Python, I also, like you, Eric, I thought it's an animal, right? So I don't know why they come up with all the animal names for these things. How do you find Python? And but I started my Python journey in 2011. That was when we were at Bloomberg. So what were we using Python for? We were using mostly for validating the huge amounts of the data license and the back office data that we had. Since then, the use of Python has evolved from a scripting language to a modeling language to now a data science kind of language, and people build even sophisticated UIs with Python. But just looking at how things kind of in terms of the consumers of this data, how a organization has usually structured their applications from enterprise architecture point of view. If we look at it, there are now the systems of engagement, systems that people use to engage and do the activities that they need to do. And then there are systems of record, which are basically your core processing systems. It could be your core internal data and external data that you bought from the market data vendors. And then somewhere in between sits your data lake and analytics engines and processing engines and all that stuff. So now, continuing on, the insights supply chain management pipeline that we talked about, data lakes typically were looked at cheap storage, a place, but now people are moving from data lakes to lake houses, which are basically has both the capabilities of storing vast amount and diverse data, as well as computing capabilities on top of it. Let's say, for example, you want to do the data cataloging, you want to do the source crawling, or you want to make sure it supports data warehouse type of functionality, such as transaction support or the schema governance, things of that nature. You can actually do that. It's kind of evolution of the data lake to a lake house. And now, what's the difference? Why do we care, right? So now, all your BI applications, your machine learning, your data scientists, as well as your real-time analytics can actually go directly into the lake house instead of some going into data warehouse and some going into your data lake, and then building a user-friendly database on top of the data lakes. So now everyone can go directly to the lakehouse. All the users will get what they need from there.
Josh, I look forward to visiting your lake house. Phil, you brought up content a bit earlier. Way back in the day, I was involved with a couple of those content sets. Way back when it was fundamentals, estimates, research. Certainly, I know that's evolved vastly since then. So perhaps you could speak to kind of these newer data sets, the deeper, the alternative, the direction that things are and have and are heading around content.
Yeah, so there's certainly a desire to look at more and more data sets. I think the word alternative is probably going to disappear pretty quickly because I think it's going to have to be fundamental to what, as investment professionals, we all look at to do our jobs. But you could group those into things like ESG or regulatory or deep sector, you name it. One of the things we did to facilitate this is for our end users is we've created a marketplace in the cloud called the Open Factset Marketplace. And it's an environment which alternative data providers can onboard their data into our ecosystem exceptionally quickly. And as a practitioner, if you wanted to look at that data alongside the other data that exists in there, we could turn you on in a day, essentially, and you could come in. You could begin programming against the data in Python or whatever language you wanted. And you could evaluate pretty quickly in this data discovery environment whether or not there was some value in that data for your investment process. And then you could go on to a more formal engagement with us in terms of purchasing the data, either through us or directly through the vendor. So that's the type of ecosystem that we've set up to facilitate this. And it's really the benefit to us also is we get to see, which data sets have the most interest, and then we can put in the additional work we need to do to get it into our broader ecosystem as well. And it really is just a massive efficiency gain for you as practitioners and us as a technology firm to set this up. We're also, the other big trend that we're seeing is towards private markets. That's been going on for a while. So traditionally, FactSet was very much focused on public equity and debt, but now we're making a big push into private markets, which is probably 2 orders of magnitude as much data as there are in the public markets, which presents, some scaling issues, and we have to sort of reimagine ourselves how it is we go about collecting data in order to provide that to you.
Cristina, I guess jumping off that, how do you view the demands from clients have changed for Moody's, and where do you see that going, be it new content sets or new mechanisms for consumption?
Yeah, I think we as Rajesh and Phil were talking, I was thinking a little bit about the different pockets where we've seen demand or we've made changes just proactively. One of the things we started hearing some years ago now was, we want more real-time analytics, and we want more real-time predictive analytics. It could be for probability of default, or it could be for, the health score or something. And that made us look into, what alternative data sets could enhance our predictive analytics. So, we looked at things, for example, as, behavioral data. We looked at Yelp data. We've done a lot of experimentation. Not everything has been incorporated, but we've definitely found, for example, in the case of some data, of some of those data sets, that we got an increment in the predictive ability of the models by incorporating some of those traditional data sets. So that's one set of uses that we've seen based on demand from our clients and also curiosity from our quantitative teams. The other one, it's, the ability to either increase our coverage or give a more comprehensive view of an asset by adding additional data. So, a couple of examples there, for example, foot traffic data was very key for us to, for example, inform, commercial real estate data assets. So that's something that we added last year. We've also been very doing a lot around sentiment score. And sentiment score, not only to evaluate a company, but also to for us to understand, what events could be meaningful for us to publish in the website when we talk about news or events related to, any sort of asset. And then the last thing, I think all this, alternative data and new technologies have also made us reevaluate how we source our data. One of my favorite examples of that is, in our commercial real estate data and analytics business, we are in the business of sourcing new construction data, because of course, new construction data is going to affect the supply you have on commercial real estate, and that's going to affect, the prices and the demand and the supply. And that used to be a very manual process where we would maintain relationship with counties, and we would make a lot of calls and a lot of, web surveying. And last year, we embarked in a contract with Boeing, the aerospace company, and we're now sourcing all our new construction from satellite images. And that has a huge impact in both accuracy, but also in the efficiency and our ability to deliver timely data to the market. So I think that the impact is, from many fronts.
Oh, that's pretty cool. I thought, satellites were for counting cars and parking lots. That's pretty cool. So here's a selfish question from my standpoint as a product manager. How are these data trends been impacting basically the product development lifecycle, the effort that you go around in terms of road mapping? That's the open-ended question to kind of more point out a bit further to Phil, because this falls into kind of my own interests. I'm just curious really around the buzzwords, the acronyms, AI, machine learning, NLP. How is that being used, or the ideas surrounding that looking to be applied to either existing or new content sets?
So I'll point out two things there on that. One is, we're getting more real-time feedback ourselves. As a technology company, about how the product's being used, which data is being used, what the workflow looks like for different users, and that in turn allows our product managers and product developers to sort of shift course more quickly to make sure that we're creating the best workflow for our clients and we're serving up the right data for them. And the product's changing too. I think Factset has always been an exceptional tool. It's been very high quality. It's been very configurable as an investment professional. You could build your workflow. But what Factset has not done historically, which we are beginning to do now, is be a little bit more predictive about what it is you would want to look at on any given day, just given the magnitude of information that you need to consume to make decisions. So the best example I can give you of that for now is something called our advisor dashboard. So we're beginning to do more in the wealth space. And let's imagine that we have a wealth advisor who has 200 families or individuals that she's managing her, the money for, and she comes in the morning and is trying to figure out what are the 10 best next actions I should take as an advisor for my clients. So what we're doing now is we're using cognitive computing to essentially predict what types of things that advisor may want to do in terms of their first, 10 actions that day. We can look at the holdings of the portfolios. We can look at news events that have happened around those portfolios. We can look at earnings releases. We can look at macroeconomic events or political events that might have happened that would influence the need to do something with those portfolios or contact those clients. So we're going to see a need for more and more of that. As we need to consume more information to make decisions. Awesome.
And for those in the audience, don't be shy. Feel free to submit some questions. On that wavelength, I'm going to, open it up to all three of you. Perhaps maybe this ends up being more around Moody's or Factset as it relates to third-party data. Wondering the process around diligencing those sources, the integration with other data that might already be in your system, and kind of just the uptake of that workflow.
Sure. So, one thing that I already mentioned, the open Factset marketplace, which is accelerating our ability to onboard more data into the ecosystem. The other thing we're doing is, offering something called concordance as a service. So it takes a lot of work to map all of the entities and all the different data sets so that investment professionals can accurately analyze that data. So continuing to supercharge those efforts and essentially make available tools for our developers or our clients to concord or integrate data is something that we're very focused on, and we see as a core competency and a differentiator. But as the data becomes more unstructured and so on, and we're looking at more and more things, getting all of that together in an entity data map that people can use, it has a lot of value. That's a big focus for us as a company.
Going to put me out of a job. I spent a lot of time trying to integrate data.
Now you can work. Now you can focus on the analysis instead.
By all means. Yeah. So on that, you're talking about.
Go ahead.
Sorry. Go ahead.
No, I would say that's a trend that we're seeing a lot. The importance of being able to match the data. I think it's to tie to your former question to Phil. It's also a good use of machine learning, where you can leverage those to match different data sets. We saw great examples of that in our private property data business, in our KY and Know Your Customer business, and our commercial real estate data business. And to answer your second question about third-party data sets, our view is we will integrate whatever makes sense for the customer, to be honest. But I do think the tricky part there is not so much making the data sets available, but putting them together. So we're not doing it as broadly as it seems that Phil is doing it at Factset, but we do have pockets. For example, our private company business does that as a service for customers, and a commercial real estate unit does it as well.
Or Josh, maybe you could speak to enterprise demand for kind of this data and how that's shaping the roadmaps of vendors or even within firms as they're looking to develop tools internally.
When we look at from enterprise point of view, depending on what they're doing, the needs are very different, right? Like, for example, if we take a big institutional investor, they want to use these technologies to build a data set that can provide insights into their compliance and legal aspects. Like, for example, they want to be able to provide a universe of securities that pass the compliance, that can narrow down the focus of the portfolio management and analyst teams. And they want to be able to use just Cristina was saying, matching different data sets using some sort of a fuzzy logic, or it could be NLP-based techniques. Also building an entity master, knowing let's say, for example, Alphabet has a number of subsidiaries, and Google, right now, we don't know what type of company it is. Is it internet company? It's a payment company, or it's a financial service company? What is it? For example, if we look at Google in Europe, there is a separate entity that does the payment services. So if you are basically, and there are regulations that basically drive what these institutional investors can do and cannot do in certain countries in Europe. So in order for them to guide their analysts and portfolio managers, they need to provide them the vetted market universe that they should be focusing on for their investments. So then there are for example, let's take an insurance company. One of the insurance company, their aim is to provide any small business that approaches them for commercial insurance. They want to be able to provide that in 20 minutes. How do they do that? They want to have a lot of data available to the agents who are on the call with these companies, in order to be able to do that in 20 minutes. Maybe they want to get the health data. Maybe they want to get the small business, data providers that are providing financial information about these businesses. And then companies are also building knowledge graphs, right? So for example, we talked about data lakes, and then the people also build data lakes by domains. And once they build the data lakes by domains, they want to convert that into a knowledge graph that is easily accessible. Now, in the knowledge graph, you also have the relationship between different data attributes that you're storing. You kind of understand the data in a more meaningful way for your analysis than just having a data set. So getting like the unstructured data, internal data, external market vendor data, and building these data domains and building a knowledge graph on top of it to guide your business decisions is what the frontier, the companies who are looking to kind of take one step ahead or looking to build it.
We're touching on going from the actual data to data visualization, which is always a sexy topic. So maybe let's speak to that and kind of just go through that a bit deeper. So Cristina, can you maybe speak about how data has moved away from just being in Excel sheets and grids, and how things are being interconnected in a more visual manner?
I'm going to even expand the question, which is, I think we've moved from Excel to, and from PDF to a complete different way of interacting with things. I think that's all driven by, I would point at two things. One, it's the need to have a more holistic picture of whatever you're analyzing again. So, you cannot have things that are not, that have lent to poor interactivity, such as PDFs, or less flexibility, such as Excel. So that I think that's one of the main drivers. Yeah.
Phil, kind of going further on that, how is data being visualized differently today than from in the past? Even perhaps speaking to the tools that might be getting used there.
Yeah, I just saw, yesterday a great example of that, where we have deep sector data that might be around real estate or mining or whatever it is, and just being able to show that on a map, and then look at that through time and look at the size of those things in different ways. It just makes it so much easier as an end user to kind of analyze the data rather than just sort of looking at columns of data in Excel and then graphing it and so on. So that's one good example. I mean, another trend that is pervasive and one that we're really all in on is the unbundling of our platform. So traditionally, Factset would build all of our own proprietary databases and proprietary code and so on. We're now using a lot more third-party tools integrated into our system, to do this type of visualization. And in turn, we are opening up our platform and unbundling it and integrating it into other people's platforms. So now you could take a piece of Factset and just place it into your CRM workflow if you wanted to. You could embed it right in your Salesforce instance for your user if that's what they were spending their time, in a lot of the time. So I think this is an important trend on the technology side, and the firms that are unbundling their product, having an approach, building things with standards which fit more closely together, I believe are the ones that will win in our industry in the future.
Yeah, and to add to what Phil was saying, I think we still believe there's a certain view that you have to present to your customers, because again, there's different level of sophistication, different level of needs. But out of that, kind of standard view, then you can offer them, for example, to customize the data sets, to customize their experience, to customize how they want to use it. So I think that ability to unbundle and to be able, and unbundling meaning that the users can select whatever data they can use to, or you can integrate either in third-party systems, as Phil was mentioning, or in the internal platforms of the customer. So I think it's key of how you think about that architecture and make sure that you don't have one, big module, but you have a lot of micro components that then you can, present to the customer in whatever way you want.
So we've been talking about unbundling data in different forms of visualizations. Rajesh, I think you brought up items like Tableau earlier. You want to maybe expand upon how some of that data can be presented or worked upon differently, given that we're not all just stuck in Excel anymore. Things have evolved far further than that and being used in different ways.
Yeah. So Tableau, people have used to build like the dashboards with Tableau, right? So they built the workbooks and the views for specific purposes within the Tableau. One of the things that we've noticed is the business users want to be actually alerted based on the certain events that are happening and certain let's say for example, your Tableau dashboard, it's going from like the green to red. Instead of me having to go to the Tableau, look for it, I want to be able to notify it that something has gone from green to red. You want to take a look at it and you want to take an action on it. So that's where something called decision support systems or decision support dashboards are very helpful. Like, again, we can build this decision support system with an array of Tableau. It could be a combination of Excel-like functionality, embedded into web interface, so that when you make a change, like you have the ability to basically do formulas and stuff like that. And it's not just available for you because it's embedded in the web. It is available for everyone. You want to do a scenario analysis, you change some assumptions for your investment, and you want everyone in your team, the analysts as well as the portfolio managers, to be able to see what the numbers looks like based on the changes in the assumptions. So that's where a decision support system, which is built with a combination of like the embedded spreadsheet kind of technologies with the formulas and stuff like that as well as Tableau, as well as like ability, like just like how Cristina was saying, you want to give them ability to do self-service and customization, because every business user kind of knows what are the things that you should be like focusing on. Like, for example, Bloomberg terminals and I'm sure Factset also has some sort of UI that's provided to the users. Like, we know that every trader's like how many screens they have and what kind of stuff they want to monitor on is different because their needs are unique. So like if the goal of the enterprise, like the technology team or the need from the business users, is to have that customization and self-service abilities so that they can have the data that they're interested in to make the decisions that they need to make in front of them.
So we've certainly talked about data. Data is growing. It's fast. If anything, it's overwhelming. Perhaps you can maybe speak about how to comb through that from the lens of notifications, alerting, kind of better smarts around those changes from from green to red and whatnot. Cristina, can you maybe just dive a bit deeper as to how that's changed and perhaps some of the requests that are coming in to make people's lives a bit easier given the finite nature of time?
Yeah, I would say that in addition to the alerts, there's a big request of telling me what it's important. Yes, I might want to drill down, a lot maybe, but when we were just doing some user testing on a new feature that we're about to release, and what came up, loud and clear was, I want to come to the page, and if I have 30 seconds, I want you to tell me what's important. So I think it's a dual experience of both, getting maybe those alerts, but we have to be mindful with the alerts also, because we have, we're all kind of saturated of the emails, but also being able to go to the platform, you're going to take a quick snapshot that it really tells you, okay, you have to look at this, this, and this, or tied to that, if you're doing an analysis, what are the trends? This is going up, this is going down. So something that gives you a really quick snapshot of what's happening.
So Phil, how are you helping users cut through the noise, dealing with kind of an overabundance of information and getting starter notifications?
Yeah, so in addition to what I mentioned, if you're managing a portfolio and sort of giving you an idea of which securities you might want to look at, we're also using Cognitive now to send signals to clients. So we have some predictive stuff that might be of interest to users that would pop up on their homepage. Like, we will predict which companies will be moving in and out of the S&P 500, for example. That's one good example of which companies look like they're going to be issuing debt pretty soon.
Interesting. So I feel like no conversation's complete without talking about the land of regulation, legal compliance, that whole law, and how it relates to data. So, Cristina, can you maybe speak to that, how that impacts whether it be internally or the use by your clients?
Eric, I missed some of your words. So can you
just the wavelength around compliance in legal and regulatory, whether it's regionalized, how is that impacting the use of data?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to start maybe by answering the question a little bit, because we are a heavily regulated business on the rating side, and And one of the big moves that we're doing actually right now, it's trying to address our separate the way we address our regulatory requirements versus the customer needs. So that gives us the ability to, again, put a more comprehensive view. If you're looking at an issuer, for example, that allows us not to only show ratings and research, but just to show a whole, slew of data that it's relevant for that company. Now, I don't think I answered your specific. What was your other question in terms of regulation?
It was an open-ended question around just the land of compliance and legal regulations, since given that your business has a lot of connection to that world.
Yeah. So it's maybe, we went to the extreme of separation. I think what we're trying now is and make sure that we are in compliance with everything. It's really trying to understand what are those regulatory requirements and make sure that we have a place where we comply with those, but that we separate them from the user experience. And that allows us to, again, integrate more data sets and do a lot of the things that we've been talking throughout the call.
And Phil, from a different perspective, how are your end users that kind of fall into the land of legal compliance, regulatory, kind of behaving differently or maybe asking different things of data?
I guess I'll go to ESG, which is going to be pervasive, I think. So there's some overlap there. But that's one of the fastest trends I've seen in terms of data, and I believe it's going to be part of everybody's workflow, and I believe there's going to be more and more requirements around reporting in that area over time. That's a big focus for us, and one I think that's exciting for all of my analysts here. I'm sure they're thinking hard about that, and as practitioners, I think it's important that you're getting educated about ESG and some of the trends and how it might affect whatever role you have at your firm.
Yeah, I think when we look at ESG, we've been also been pretty active in that regard. First you have a kind of a demand, mostly from asset managers. Conversation is very different when you talk to banks, for example, versus asset managers. Asset managers have been very vocal about the need to do sustainable investments. And then we have, we've changed some of our things. So, for example, we've been slowly incorporating ESG components into our ratings. We've rolled it out for sovereigns. We're about to roll it out for corporates. But we've also, in addition to that, tried to give, and a good idea and for the properties and the markets we covered about what's our climate risk and what's their ESG score, to call it somehow.
I'm going to go off the E from ESG and talk about environment. I'm going to change it, talk about work environment. So to bookend from the beginning of our conversation, given that we're all calling from various places and work from homeland, let's look into our respective crystal balls. How will the workplace feel and act differently in the not too distant future when perhaps all this COVID stuff is a bit more in the rear view? And I'm rather curious to kind of hear all of your perspectives. So, Rajesh, you mind starting things off?
Sure. I think it's it's going to be kind of a mixed culture, right? So we all miss going to office at least a couple of days a week. Don't want to speak for everyone, but just saying because there is a certain we're all social beings. We need to be in a social environment, and also our brain works in a certain way. And when we are communicating, it's also a collaboration of thoughts, ideas, and the intensity of the conversation with other people that most of the time basically generates the ideas. Of course, ideas are generated in solitude as well, but some people need a social environment, kind of people talk about the water cooler moment where you're establishing a certain relationship with a colleague, and it makes it much easier to kind of when you are actually working in a formal setup, you kind of understand the person. You have a little bit more emotional intelligence when you're trying to basically get some stuff done, understand other people better, and can be more empathetic. It becomes a little bit difficult to, we can be nice and empathetic and all that over Zoom, but it's a totally different thing when you're actually meeting people in person.
Phil, how will the Factset office feel in the not too distant future?
Well, it's probably going to be an evolution, based on our locations and sort of how recently we've signed leases in some of them. But I do think over time we're going to see, that hybrid working environment for sure. We've seen the benefits of working from home, and there are benefits of working in the office. So it's going to be a balance. But I don't think we're going to need, as much space as we used to over time. And the office is going to be a place where you go for a specific purpose, not just to kind of sit at your station and do work, essentially. So we're going to learn as we go, but I'm pretty sure that we'll be working in an environment which is more fluid. There'll be more hoteling, for example. And we'll figure it out. I think the other really exciting byproduct of what we've learned in the last year is how we construct teams. And I think, we weren't completely, bound to a location in terms of a team, obviously not. But this has opened up a world of possibilities globally for us in terms of how we construct the right team to build a particular product or service a particular client. And I do think opens up a lot of exciting possibilities on the talent side. So in some ways, it's kind of even the playing field in new ways, which is a good thing.
Cristina, how would things be different at Moody's, if at all, or might just be an echo? Phil?
I would say a lot of the things. I would echo a lot of the things that Phil said. Yeah, just this morning we were discussing. We're about to send a communication about the return to the office, but some of the things are saying it's a much more flexible working environment. We're definitely going to do hoteling. This hoteling concept that you kind of reserve your desk when you go to the office. We foresee different schemes. People that won't return to the office. Some people that will return 2-3 days. Some people that might want to go every day to the office. I think tied to that, there's a we've realized as companies that there's a potential saving to be made in real estate, which is part of what Phil was mentioning. I think there are other things such as traveling, for example, in our case, when you have a sales team, which I'm sure is the same case as in Factset, you have huge T&A associated to your client visits and to visiting your offices as well. And we realized, some of that, of course, we do want to do. We want to have that personal relationship with the clients, but maybe doesn't merit as many trips as it did. And then I think co-location has also radically changed. I used to be a big fan of co-locations. I wanted to have my product development squads co-located. And I think this has proved that it doesn't really mind, that as long as you are willing to adapt to the hours and log into Zoom, at the same time, we don't really care where you're sitting. So I think it's quite a dramatic change. It's also going to be evolving, and it's going to be a lot of trial and error.
I would echo that on the co-location. It's if anything, there's a lot of benefit to having folks around the globe that can do work while you get to sleep. So for the charter holders who are kind of in traditional roles that might be looking to kind of, I guess, pivot more towards these newer kind of data-driven areas, any thoughts on how they might approach kind of some of these newer roles and how to evolve into that? Rajesh, any thoughts there?
Yes, I think, I can, I come from a technology background, right? So I was lucky to work with some companies, and then I did my charter. The powerful thing I would say as a charter holder, if you want to basically help work in the data-driven space, the advantage of being a translator, right? If you pick up enough technology, if you understand enough of how to basically the aspects of data engineering, aspects of machine learning and AI, since you are a charter holder, you already have a good foundation in the business domain and the concepts. And if you had experience working in some of the firms on the business side, that combination, you can be a very powerful translator in terms of knowing what technology can do and what problems exist. You will be a good bridge between the technology team and the business leadership.
Phil, any kind of closing thoughts on that wavelength?
Well, I would just say as practitioners, it's important to, I think everyone's role is going to become more technical. And there's going to be that convergence of fundamental and quant somewhere in the middle. So if I was a practitioner, I'd make sure that I was getting up to speed and self-educated about a lot of these new tools, which I'm sure you're all doing.
And Cristina, anything?
I would echo what Phil said. I don't think technology is an option anymore. I think everybody has to be technology savvy at different levels, but I think technology and definitely, you have to be flexible and be able to embrace change. That thing that, I've heard many quants over the last year saying, no, machine learning doesn't really increase my accuracy. And you have to be more flexible and not set in your ways and really embrace technology, because I think it's going to be everybody's job.
Okay. I think we've hit the hour mark. If there's any closing thoughts from any of our speakers that I missed, please, here's your chance to kind of speak up before I close things out.
Go for it.
Okay, then in that case, I get to yield the rest of my time to Cristina to close. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you, Eric, for moderating what was an absolutely fascinating panel. I have learned a lot. I grew up learning that a wealth of information can be a poverty of attention. And I think just listening to our speakers here, there are a number of tools that are available to us as asset managers that we can actually use to help us better analyze a lot of the data that's out there. We've talked about red flags, we've talked about the integrity of that data, and we've talked about the integration of it. I'd like to especially thank our three panelists for the time, Rajesh, Cristina, and Phil. And tune in. I believe we have a series of these fintech panels, and hopefully you'll be learning as much as I have about the need to consolidate our data, the need to standardize it, and the need to integrate it much more closely into portfolio management. Thank you, everyone.